Alright, hello again YouTubers, it's me. Just coming back again to share a bit more of my collection with you. The past few times I've done mostly kind of metal and hard rock, and I did have one jazz video that I put in there, but I thought I'd kind of show some more of the fun stuff in my collection by looking at some of my favorite soundtracks. So let's kind of dive into it. First one here, Oh Brother Where Art Thou? If you've seen the movie, you know it's totally hilarious, but this is also a very, very good soundtrack. It's a lot of good old-fashioned, like, down-home country twang type thing. When you initially talk about it, it doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but this is actually a very, very good soundtrack. It has a lot of good stuff on it. Of course, probably the most notable song is A Man of Constant Sorrow. I mean, it's probably the one I think is most popular. And of course, this was the, I believe, album of the year back in, what year was that, 2000 when this came out. So very, very good soundtrack. And of course, you never forget about Beat Street back in the good old breakdancing days when, you had your high top laced Adidas and your freaking parachute pants with 8,000 zippers on it and everything else, but a lot of very good tracks on these two albums, African Bambaataa and a number of different great groups, so both of those are very good classics. This is a record I think that never really got its due. Neil Diamond's Jazz Singer. This is one of those movies that you stumble into when you stay homesick from school one day, and I remember that's actually how I first found out about Neil Diamond. And I mean, song for song, this is I think one of the best albums in terms of soundtracks go, because it's basically Neil Diamond's greatest hits. And as you kind of know, Neil Diamond obviously is a freaking musical genius, but I mean, you have songs like Love on the Rocks, Hello Again, America, Songs of Life, what other good stuff on here, Jerusalem, You Baby, Hey Louise. So very, very good soundtrack. And then the one and only Loudon Swain from I can't even say his name without laughing. The classic Vision Quest. Anytime you want to really get pumped up, this is always a good album to put on. You remember this good movie where Loudon Swain 168 taking on Shoot, undefeated state champion, all that good stuff. But as you can see here, it's a really good soundtrack. It has a lot of Journey on there, Madonna, Don Henley, John Waite, Dio, Foreigner, Sammy Hagar, and of course the real popular song Lunatic Fringe by Red Rider. So once again, really good soundtrack, great one to have inside your collection. Next one we have here is The Heavenly Kid, another one of those classic 80s movies. A lot of good stuff on this one as well. I think the most popular track is Out on the Edge, Heavenly Kid. So once again, if you've seen this movie, you kind of know it's a perfect representation of what the 80s was about, and this is a really good soundtrack to go with it. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you definitely cannot say enough about this movie. Not a big fan of Sean Penn. He kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, but I have to give him a lot of credit because in this movie, he was totally hilarious. I mean, one of the most convincing stoners I've ever seen in a movie before in my life. But this 2 LP soundtrack has a lot of really good stuff on it. I mean, really big names. You're talking about Jim Buffett, Sammy Hagar, the Go-Go's, Jackson Browning, Don Henley, Billy Squier. So once again, a lot of really good tracks. So if you ever get a chance, get your hands on this. Very good soundtrack. Just One of the Guys, another one of those 80s movies that will forever be burnt into the back of my mind. This is also a really good soundtrack. It has a song by Ronnie Spector, which I think should have been a much, much bigger hit than it actually was. Tonight You're Mine, Baby. She's one of those ladies that have kind of that crackly type voice, kind of like Stevie Nicks. Just real sexy, but a very good singer, very good song. So this, once again, is a soundtrack I would highly recommend. And back to the initial birth of hip-hop and rap, going back to Krush Groove from the soundtrack from the movie Krush Groove. This was a really good soundtrack, mainly because what you had on this, between the soundtrack and the movie, were all of the top hip-hop and rap acts back in the day. I mean, you had the Fat Boys, you had Run DMC, you had Curtis Blow, the Beastie Boys were in this movie. Who else? Sheila E. was in this movie. Uh, Full Force was in this movie. I mean, just all the groups that really kind of brought hip hop to the forefront was in this movie. So I think this is really cool because Krush Groove to me is what hip hop was really about. I mean, back before we got into all the stupid, the gang banging and all this, the language now. They can't even write a serious lyric without just having to put a FU or something in every other sentence. To me, this is really what hip hop was about. I mean, could you imagine today trying to take the top 10 rap acts and putting them together without some crap breaking out? Would never happen. But back in the day, these guys were just together celebrating what they were doing and appreciating what each other was doing. So once again, to me, what real hip-hop was about. Now, this is a track that does not get, or I should say a record that does not get enough credit as far as I'm concerned. I don't care how much people want to argue. Grease 2 was so much better than the original Grease. Now, of course, it's only myself and my brothers that have ever said that. Everybody else tends to favor the first Grease. But Grease 2, as far as the movie and the soundtrack, I think is much better than the original Grease. Sorry, John. But this is a really good soundtrack, too. A lot of different fun songs. If you like the movie, you'll definitely love the soundtrack because listening to this is almost the exact same thing as watching the movie. So, once again, Grease 2, not Grease. Streets of Fire, this is a really good soundtrack as well. Features a group called Fire Inc. that has a number of good songs on here. One of the most popular probably being Nowhere Fast. Once again, if you've seen the movie, you're pretty aware of that track, kind of the title soundtrack. But this is a really good movie, number one, but definitely check out the soundtrack as well. I think you'll be very happy with that. Saturday Night Fever, not going to get into details. Crack on disco all you want. This soundtrack was slamming, so sorry, I got to stick up for that one. Now this right here is probably my favorite piece within my soundtracks, Better Off Dead, from the movie with John Cusack. My favorite track on this one is going to be Arrested by You by Rupert Hines. A very mellow, melodic, almost like a jazzy type of 80s new wave ballad. I mean, it really kind of covers all those different areas, and it's a really good track. Another one I wish would have kind of made it a lot bigger than it did, but I said this is probably my favorite soundtrack in my collection. Return of the Living Dead. This was a really good find, not the easiest soundtrack to get your hands on, but this soundtrack featured a really good group called SSQ that has some really good songs on here. The best probably being Tonight We'll Make Love Until We Die, which is kind of a punkish, new wave, pop type song that, just really worked well together. And, it was kind of a good, funny movie as well, so that's definitely a good soundtrack. 16 Candles, Molly Ringwald, Queen of the 80s. No 80s collection or soundtrack collection is anything without 16 Candles. Charlie Brown, the classic Linus and Lucy, gotta have that track. It's a really fun song to listen to. It's kind of hard to put that on, I'd have a smile on your face. So, Charlie Brown is something you kind of hold throughout your childhood and get to enjoy it as an adult as well. And then, of course, back to our zipper pants. We have Breakin and Breakin 2. So, once again, two really good soundtracks to take you back to the days when you used to spin around in your head. And those were enjoyable days, so I definitely want to treasure them, and these two LPs definitely do that. And the very last one here, Conan the Barbarian. This is a very good soundtrack, too. I don't have a lot of classical music in my collection. I have some Pavarotti and a couple other things, a few other soundtracks on CD, but this, without question, is the one that I listen to the most. Composed and conducted by Basil Paladares. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure, so if someone knows, definitely give me a heads up. But really good music, good power stuff. I mean, when you listen to it, you almost feel like you're watching the movie all over again. Kind of just very dramatic type songs, very mellow type songs, a little bit of everything. So if you get a chance, do not disregard this soundtrack. Make sure you check it out. But thanks again, YouTubers. That's some more pieces out of my collection, and I will share more soon, and I hope you do the same.